Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Rochester at the corner of Oak and East Main, where a Queen Anne-style house, a Rochester couple, and a 1918 publication have all come together to form an investigation of sorts in Rochester. They're now doing the history and the research on 50-some residences here that were here in 1918 when this publication we're going to be talking about was printed. And Ray Bruzan is a member of the Historical Preservation Society here in Rochester. And Ray, you and Pam, your wife, have taken on quite a chore, haven't you?
It's been real interesting, and it's been an education in itself, yes.
The book that we were talking about is this Orange Judd Farmer Pictorial Community Album. Now, this was published in 1918. It's 250-some pictures from Rochester Township, and as far as we know, this is the only book that Orange Judd Publishing ever did about a community.
That's what we have found out, and up to this point, and we feel very fortunate to have it because it represents a baseline for our study of homes here in Rochester. 250-some
or 60-some pictures from 1918. This is just a sample of the kinds of things that you now have, the baseline you're talking about, to go around Rochester Township and find what's still there, what's been torn down, how things were in 1918. There aren't many communities that have this kind of benefit, is there?
No, we feel very lucky and very fortunate and indeed to have this. It's something that really is the basis for all of our studies that we're doing right now in these houses.
Yeah. And the whole point here is you and the Historic Preservation Society here have decided that, you know, we need to do a walking tour with this information. And so you and Pam are putting together a brochure as we speak, right?
We are. It's all part of, we also have a committee that's called the Orange Judd Committee. We've got Mark and Karen Ritterbush working on it, Nan Akins, Terry and John Runyons, and Tris and Debbie Snepper. And they're all working on this. We're working with the individual homeowners to help them research their homes that are found indeed in this book.
And as we go through this program, what we're going to do is you and Pam are you were sort of a test case. When you moved into this house in the 70s, you started the research as to who built it, when it was built, who lived there, what went on there. And you're encouraging other people in Rochester to do the same thing so that when you develop this brochure, you've got additional information for folks.
Yes, and that information we hope, will be passed on to future generations of Rochester citizens. And that's the main primary purpose of this. The walking tour will be nice, but what we find and will be passed on in the future is what's going to be important.
Now, inside your house, you have some of the items that you found when you were doing the research on your house, and it'll give us some indication of what other folks in town may be finding as they do the research on their house. So you want to take us in?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Let's go.
Ray, back in the 70s, when you and Pam moved into this house, you did a lot of work. And so you're tearing things up and moving things out, and in some cases even moving baseboards or removing baseboards. And on one of those days when you were moving baseboards, that's when you really got curious.
Very, very much so, because as I removed the baseboard, behind it, I uncovered and discovered a tintype photograph.
Leave that right there so we can get a real good look at it.
And on this photograph is a gentleman holding two children. And that's really what started the quest, if you will. I wanted to know who was this person, who were the children, and that kind of got me started on researching the history of this house.
And so in the process of doing that, then you find out, let's see, okay, now who is this guy? Then you find out who he was, but you couldn't find out when the house was built. And you didn't know who lived in the house after Mr. Wright. His name was Wright, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So it got you started on this whole chain of events, which you hope the other homeowners in Rochester are doing as well, right?
Yeah, we hope so. And perhaps ours can be the model, if you will, for the other homeowners to research their homes.
You know, we mentioned there are some 50-some properties in Rochester that were in the Orange Judd book, and this is a good map of the ones that you've been able to locate. These black dots, they're still there, right? These buildings are still there.
These homes are still there, the buildings are still there, and that was one of our big questions, was how many are left? since 1918 when the Orange Judd book was put together. And we found an amazing number, that there were 54 of these left in the village. There are, we're not sure even how many are left in the township. There could be another 50 out there.
Yeah.
But we haven't researched that yet, but that's going to be another future endeavor.
But these 50-some owners of the properties, they know who they are, and so they're kind of looking into it themselves. They're working on it themselves. And during this program, we're going to get to see some of those houses and meet some of those folks.
We hope so,
yeah. Now, here, this is also interesting. When you were doing your homework on these 50-some properties, you were able to locate pictures of people that built and lived in these properties.
We have, yes.
Wow.
And we hope to include these pictures in the walking tour brochure. And I think that's going to be a unique feature to our tour that other tours probably won't have.
Mm-hmm. You're using this as kind of a guide, this Historic Evansville book. And what about yours would be different than what's in this one?
Well, ours will have two pictures for each single house. We'll have the Orange Judd picture from 1918, and we'll have a modern picture from today in it. And then, of course, we'll have a genealogy as a description of the history of what the homeowners have found. Including also in our brochure, again, will be the pictures. We hope as many pictures as we can find of the people who lived in those homes in 1918.
And that'll really personalize the whole effort for people. And the nice thing is, you create one of these. Your first one you're looking at, early 2014, I guess. And you would make it small enough that people could actually walk it. They could do a walk.
We think so. And the first one, we're aiming at about 28, 29 homes will be in it. And then as soon as that one is published, we will go forward and try to complete the 54.
Well, what do you say you and I start our own walking tour?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, Ray, we're still on East Main, and the house we're looking at was here in 1918. It was in the book. What do we know about it?
Well, we do know that this is the Sylvester McCoy home and residence, and Sylvester was the grandson of the first settler of Rochester. The first settler was James McCoy, came here in 1818 and 1819. He was a big farmer, had like over 200 acres, and this is the grandson of that first settler of Rochester.
Do McCoys still live around here?
To my knowledge, we don't have any McCoys living in the area. There were a few relatives, and I'm not sure really how many are left here in this area.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing, and you can see that there are the original parts of this home. I'm looking at the fireplace and parts of it. But boy, it's been updated really nicely, hasn't it?
It really has. It's been well kept, and Queen-style type of home architecture, and beautiful home.
Any idea if what they have learned, or if they're learning anything about this house?
Well, it's being researched now. I believe they're looking at the abstract for ideas.
And abstracts, you've gone through a few of those yourself, haven't you?
We have. We've been able to collect about 15 abstracts and make copies of them through the village. And of course, they're very important learning tools for us. 533
East Main. What do we know? Anything about this one?
We do know that Thomas Dillon lived in this house in 1918, and as the Orange Judd book indicates, we know that he was a Methodist minister. This house is somewhat unique because it's had 4 families of Fairchilds and Ritterbushes lived through this, and there's currently a Ritterbush that lives here. So it's been in the family for a long time.
Well, they should be able to find out then, if it's been in the family for a long time, they should be able to go back, because that's part of the problem, isn't it, when it changes hands?
Yes, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
The unique house about this house is what we have found is that it has a very unique roof style. And I believe it's the only type of roof style here in the whole village.
And if you look at it, you can tell that most houses, the roofs go the other way. From front to back, they peak. This one peaks in the middle going the other way.
Yes, it does.
It's interesting.
Very unique.
Yeah. We're at 201 Mill Street, Ray, and this house, this looks different.
Yeah, this house is different in the sense that it's a Gothic style home, and perhaps the only one of that style here in Rochester.
Really? I'll be doggone. What do we know about it? Who built it?
Well, it was built in 1868 by Carter Tracy, one of the early players of Rochester. He was responsible for building a lot of the local buildings. He was a merchant in downtown, and we'll be seeing one of his buildings later today.
Okay, so he not only built this one. Now, 1868 is pretty early, isn't it?
Pretty early, yeah.
Yeah. but we'll see examples of his work downtown because what, he was a builder or he was a retailer? Or
He
what?
was both. He was both.
He would build his own buildings,
Yes,
huh?
that's just about the case, yes. Yes, and he built this in 1868. There was a fireplace in every room as he built it. And it has an interesting history in who lived here as well. It was followed by, in the 1920s, by Mr. Sturdy. And John Sturdy came in, and we've discovered that he was a Confederate soldier.
Really?
And that he lived here until his death, and he's buried here in Rochester. Well, he's actually buried in the Buckhart Cemetery.
Is that right? Does his gravestone mention anything about him being a Confederate soldier?
I don't think so. But the records are there, and the family Sturdy has told us that, yes, indeed, he was a Confederate soldier.
Interesting, yeah. We might also mention, if anybody's finds this house appealing here on Mill Street, it's for sale.
That's correct. Yeah.
Piece of history.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, Jane Lunt, we're still on Mill Street. This is known as the Harcourt House.
Yes.
It's now the Lunt House, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
But it was known as the Harcourt House in 1918. How long have you lived here?
We lived here since March of 1990, and our family was quite young when we moved in, and so we've just kind of left it as family-friendly as possible and tried to make it just a warm, inviting place to welcome our family and friends.
It still looks, I mean, you all have done a wonderful job, you and the people before you, of keeping it original, because it looks like 1890.
Well, thank you. We tried to keep it that way.
What did you have to do to modernize it, to make it family friendly? Did you have to do plumbing and electric and all that
Yes,
sort of
when we
thing?
first moved in, there was like a transition period where we had the plumbing and electrical work and some insulation and roofing done just to try to make it more family friendly, and of course, install more outlets, cable, stuff like that wasn't available at that time.
Yeah, you had a growing family, and I mean, you got to have your Wi-Fi, and you got to have your cable, and you got to have all that. Okay, I got it.
So,
what about the roofing and all that up there? Have you replaced any of that?
we replaced the roof initially, and we're due to get a little bit more of that done, but when we first re-roofed it the first time, it had to go all the way down to the original studs and everything. It had so many layers on it and stuff that it went right down to the studs and had all new plywood and everything put on there, and so it's been a work in progress.
Yeah. I snuck a peek inside and noticed that you've kept the inside looking very original too. Could we take a look?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Nice entryway.
Well, thank you.
The staircase and the balcony, or the arm rail and everything is really it's just a nice old, looks like old walnut, just like it was built.
Yeah, we tried to keep it the way it was. We didn't want to modernize it in any way. That's part of the appreciation of a home like this, is to keep as much original as we can. So
Don't you love the high ceilings too?
It's amazing.
It makes you feel, it just gives you a feeling of space.
Yes.
It's really nice.
They're 10 foot on the main level and 9 foot on the second story, so.
And original flooring.
Yes, pine
And it wasn't
floors.
all scored up, which
No,
in
it
a lot of old
wasn't.
houses, it's moving in and moving out. People get them all scored up. but
Right. It originally had carpet when we moved in. I'm not sure what time carpet was installed, so it was very fortunate for us to just be able to rip that carpet up, and we didn't have to do a lot of sanding or anything. We just kind of left it the way it was.
Now they would have called that the parlor in the old days.
I
but
think so,
You
yes.
call it a living room. What do you call
Yes,
it?
yes.
And you still have the original fireplace. That's kind of nice.
Well, this actually isn't original. The original fireplace was marble, and it had like a heat insert in it, and at the time of trying to restore that, it just broke apart.
Is
so
that
this
right?
is not an original fireplace, no, but we were able to get a mantle from St. Louis. There are a lot of places that have historical salvage, they go into buildings and salvage things out. So we tried to match it with the trim on our,
Nice
on
job.
our,
Nice job. Do a little brickwork, and you're back in business,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And if you look at the woodwork in this, as far as you know, is the woodwork original
it
around
is,
the
yeah,
doors?
yes it is.
Oh, it's
Everything's
beautiful.
original.
It's beautiful.
And we have pocket doors. I'm not sure if you're wanting to see
Yeah,
them.
you
But-
take that one. I'll take this one.
But, at one time, I don't know if these were used to close off rooms for heating or for privacy or whatever, but
Either way.
we've got the pocket doors they do come out all the way.
I'm always amazed the ones that actually slide.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that, it had not been modernized
Yeah.
a lot, so we were able to keep it as intact as possible.
And I think you mentioned earlier that I think you grew up on a farm, right?
Yes.
So you and your mom and her mom you were used to and liked old stuff.
Yes, yes.
And you still collect antiques, or
Yes.
you like to furnish with antiques?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I can tell
We,
with that piece there. It's gorgeous.
Thank you very much.
You have an interesting situation in this house. When they built it, or shortly after they built it, they dated it, and somebody signed some work in one of the rooms.
Yes, yes.
And you have consciously made a decision not to paint over that when you painted the house. So can we take a look at that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right
Following
upstairs.
you. May of 1890, and there are initials under it.
Yes.
Do we know anything more?
We haven't been able to ascertain exactly what the initials stand for, so we're not sure if it's a builder that was involved or maybe the plasterer of the home. By looking at the abstract and the deed, we can kind of get an idea that it was maybe built in 1882, and then this 1890 date, we're still investigating.
Still trying to figure out
Yeah,
what that means.
yeah.
Somebody did it for a reason. I'm kind of glad you didn't cover it up, because you may be able to figure out
Right,
what
yeah.
that was.
We've got some people
Yeah.
helping us out there too, so.
You know, when I knew I recognized the name Lunt, people wonder why I'm holding a football. When I came to Rochester, because you have some sons that play a little bit of football, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes.
Is Will,
This
right?
is my son Will. This is his bedroom, yes, and he played. He just finished his career at Western Illinois, and then I have a son Weston who's now over at the U of I.
Yeah, yeah,
So.
yeah. I know. I knew the name. And are they both quarterbacks?
Yes, they are.
Terrific,
Yes.
terrific. And Wes, I think it's Wes. He'll be a quarterback at U of I. I think they're expecting him to start, aren't they?
I'm not sure about that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
Yeah, okay.
But yes,
Thanks for showing us around.
no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ray, attentive viewers will know immediately that the picture we're showing them and the house we're showing them don't look very similar. There's a reason for that, isn't there?
There truly is. As we discovered, and we drove by this house many, many years and tried to match it up with homes that are in the Orange Judd book, but never could find it and almost gave up on it until last year we drove behind it, and lo and behold, all those years we'd been looking at the back of the house. So what we had when we found the front of the house, we definitely matched it up with the Forsyth house.
And that would have been, it wouldn't have even been on Mill Street, would it? It would have been on East Main Street, wouldn't it?
That's correct. It would have faced Main Street, probably a lot of trees in front, which indicated they probably had a lot of property, several lots. And so yeah, it was facing Main Street all those years.
Yeah, and you got the good fortune of being able to get into this. It's apartments now, but getting in and looking, and some of it remains unchanged, doesn't it?
There are some things that are still there. We found crown molding in one of the rooms, and that was the only house in Rochester that I've seen that has crown molding in it. And I think that the sense of this was a very wealthy person who built this house. It's a brick home. We think it dates back pretty old too.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's continue this conversation on the other side. We'll get a look at the front of the house, okay?
Okay.
Well, Ray, lo and behold, you go poke around long enough, you know, and you find the house you were looking for.
We sure did.
This would have been the front of the house, and his lot would have extended all the way to East Main Street, which would have been a considerable piece of property, wouldn't it?
It certainly would have, and being a large size of the house, being made of brick, I would indicate probably with as much land as he had is probably a pretty wealthy individual who had this house.
Yeah, and you date this as one of the older ones.
We think so. We really haven't figured out the date on this one yet. It could date back to the 1840s, just possibly, but we're still not sure. There's a lot of mystery about this house. It actually could have belonged to one of the early settlers of Rochester.
As we look at the picture, we know that this shed that's built on the back here, of course, wouldn't have been here.
Correct.
The front door, the porch would have been there, and it's now apartments, so that's why it's been altered the way it is. But it doesn't look at all the same. But you knew it when you saw it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Do we know anything about the owner?
Well, we do know that in 1918, the owner was a plumber in town, and Forsyth is in the census of 1918 and 1920. So we do have some records of him, but we don't have anything further back than that.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll get lucky.
We hope
Maybe
so.
if you can get in there and poke around a little bit, you might find some. You're a good investigator on these things.
Well, we've been lucky.
You did it with your own. Yeah. Okay, Ray, on Main Street, there's really a cornucopia, isn't there, of these Orange Judd buildings. Most of these are still here.
Yes, they are, and we're very fortunate to have them. We were looking at one of them where they're on the corner. It was the Oddfellows building. It was built in 1876. That's the only building that I know of that has the year actually stamped in.
Well, that made your work a little easier, didn't it?
Made it easier. That was also the home of the printer office who printed a newspaper here in Rochester in the early 1800s.
It was probably built for that reason, don't you think?
It might have been.
Yeah. And what about the next on the corner with the green roof?
Okay, that one there is the S.G. Richardson building. He was a grocer and also a postmaster. And these buildings here were built by Munson Carter, probably about, that building was probably about 1858. And the next one too.
I think we've heard the Carter name before, haven't we?
Oh, yes, we have.
Yeah, okay, because we were at a Carter house, were we not?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
Carter Tracy House.
Okay. And the little red one, it looks like it should have fallen down by now, but it's kind of tucked in there between those brick buildings.
It is. It's probably got some interesting history that we're having trouble really finding. We do know the Abshires lived there and also was a place of work for them. The Abshires, he was a barber and she was a hairdresser, and that was in the 1940s. We know it was there in 1918 because it's in the Orange Judd book.
Yeah.
So we know that we have some history. We also have the abstract on that building. So the Newmans also lived there.
Yeah, so you have a way to find out more. You've got the abstract.
Yep.
And the next one now looks like it's now an antique shop.
Yes, it is. And this building also probably about 1860 was built. Munson Carter built this one. It was a grocery store. We have some artifacts from this one. We have an early photograph of the store itself and a plate that was sold by this particular store. We have a picture of that as well.
And the town hall, of course, it looks like it's been here forever.
Yeah, the town hall was built by C.W. Fairchild, probably right around 1900. And originally it was, from what we can tell, a butcher shop, a meat shop. There are stories about C.W. Fairchild. One story is that he actually had a live bear up back in the back of the building. Since about 1912, the village purchased the building, and it was the town hall, I think, right up until about somewhere in the 1970s.
Okay, so it would have been the town hall in 1918 when the picture was taken. It was the town hall.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And then there's this majestic home on Main Street. It's a gorgeous home.
It truly is. This is the Bell House. The Bell House was built by Munson Carter.
Munson Carter again.
Yeah, he shows up a lot. This house was probably built in the 1850s, maybe 1860s. Beautiful structure. And Dr. Bell was a physician in this area, and plus a landowner. He owned land in the south as well, and he was one of the founders of the bank that we're standing next to.
I see. Okay, and then so that takes us right to the one on the corner, and this looks like this would have been one of the original, one of the first buildings in town as well.
Well, this was probably built around 1900. The building itself, a Romanesque style building, and it's got some interesting inside. It's got a metal roof, metal ceiling inside when you go in there, and it was found, one of the founders was indeed Dr. Bell.
I thought you were going to say Carter.
No, he wasn't.
Okay. He probably had something to do with it, though.
Yes.
Listen, you and Pam have your work cut out for you. It's been terrific. Thank you very much for the visit.
It's been a great
time.
And
I know the folks that live in these houses are helping you out, too.
They truly are.
Thank you for the tour.
Experience. Thank you.
For your information, we're looking at spring of 2014 to have that walking tour brochure done. And it should be very interesting, especially for history buffs here in Rochester. With another Illinois story in Rochester, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send 1995 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.